India GCC, wherein we looked at what can be done between India and the GCC countries on the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat that Honorable Prime Minister has given. And today afternoon, we have the second panel discussion on India and GCC, wherein we are seeking to look at the skill sets of the future for Indians in the Gulf. I would like to, of course, welcome Honorable Minister, as I said, also our Secretary CPV and OIA, Shri Sanjay Bhattacharya ji, who is with us, our former ambassador to UAE and also to Australia, Mr. Navdeep Suri, who is going to join us, Mr. MS Unnikrishnan from CII, the representatives from National Skill Development Council, as well as all the panelists and our ambassadors in the Gulf countries who have joined us. Without saying anything further, let me invite Honorable Minister of State for delivering his keynote address to this panel discussion.
Good afternoon to all. Secretary CPV and OIA, Ministry of External Affairs, Sri Sanjay Bhattacharya, former Ambassador Sri Navdeep Suri, Chairman of the CIA National Committee on Industrial Relations, Sri Unnikrishnan, esteemed panelists from across the GCC, our ambassadors and senior officials in GCC, ladies and gentlemen. Again, good afternoon to all of you. In fact, as JS Gulf told, I had addressed the keynote address in the morning on another panel, and I'm happy to deliver another address here today on a topic of great importance and current relevance for the Indian community in the Gulf. As you all are aware, Indian expatriates in the Gulf region number more than 8 million, of which we estimate that almost 70% would be Indian workers. Naturally, Government of India as well as the Indian community is always interested in knowing about the skill sets that can improve the employability of our human capital in the Gulf. Furthermore, with the rapidly transforming global technological landscape, regional economic situation and the prevailing COVID-19 pandemic, it becomes important for us to keep updated with the requisite future skill sets. I'm confident that the discussions in this panel today will enlighten us in this regard. As you all are aware, the Indian diaspora is one of the largest in the Gulf and comprises not only unskilled and semi-skilled workers, but also highly skilled engineers, IT experts, bankers, chartered accountants, doctors, teachers, scientists, and entrepreneurs. It's because of our strong historic people-to-people and cultural links that the region acts as an attractive destination for our workforce. This is the land which has provided opportunities to our aspiring Indians to prosper and in the process contribute in the progress and prosperity of the host countries. It's therefore imperative that we complement the expectations of our gracious hosts in the Gulf countries, both in terms of our skills and also our behavior. It's a matter of great satisfaction and pride too that our workers and professionals are the most preferred choice for host countries thanks to our law-abiding and industrious nature. It is therefore important for the Government of India and state governments to ensure that we impart requisite skill sets to our prospective immigrant workers to enable them to move up in the value chain, ensuring at the same time their welfare as they emigrate abroad. Government of India is well aware of its responsibility in this regard, particularly towards the more vulnerable blue-collar workers. The mechanism of e-migrate portal of Government of India has played an important role in ensuring safe and orderly migration of Indian workers. The e-migrate project is designed for facilitating employment of ECR category workers in 18 countries, including all countries of the Gulf region. It provides us a comprehensive online database of immigrants and connects all stakeholders, including our embassies and consulates. Including embassies and consulates, recruiting agents, and foreign employees. The e-migrate system has also been integrated with Passport Seva Project and Bureau of Immigration, insurance agencies which provide Pravasi Bharatiya Bima Yojana, and with DG shipping system. This has made the whole immigration process more efficient and transparent. The workers can see their contracts with their employers and become aware of the salaries that they will earn and their working conditions. We have also been working on the next phase of the e-migrate project, which is to connect it with the e-recruitment platforms of the host countries. The integration of these e-platforms would enable greater cooperation, scrutiny, and overall supervision by the Government of India and the host government over contractual relations between the foreign employers and Indian manpower agencies. This will bring in further transparency in the recruitment process and will facilitate greater government oversight throughout the migration cycle. I need not mention the accrued benefits to workers in the form of elimination of fake visas and contract substitution. The process of integration of e-migrate with the online platforms of Saudi Arabia called e-Tawtiq and UAE's Ministry of Human Resource and Employment is under progress. The test results of the pilot projects have been positive, and we hope that we will be able to make further progress. We are also working on integration of e-migrate with e-platforms of Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and Oman. We are utilizing social media platforms and digital programs such as Madad to redress grievances of our workers. You may be happy to note that we are working to develop platforms that can harmonize our workers' skills with the requirements of the foreign employers. To address this issue and incentivize demand for skilled Indian workers in the Gulf, Government of India is focusing on skill harmonization with the receiving countries. NSDC and our former and current ambassadors to UAE have done good work on this aspect, and we have arrived at a skills harmonization framework with UAE. If this model becomes successful, it could also serve as a template for other Gulf countries. This will enable us to train and equip our youth with the right skill sets and harness our demographic potentials. Skill India initiative, as you know, is an important step in this regard that aims to transform India as the skill capital of the world. It's now well known that the skills required in the future will be very different from those of today. The World Economic Forum predicts that by 2030, globally there could be displacement of 75 million jobs due to the adoption of new technologies and structural changes in the labor market. On the positive side, however, it's also predicted that 133 million new jobs will emerge. These trends undoubtedly will also impact the Gulf region, especially as the salience of oil in the world economy diminishes and the Gulf countries diversify into non-oil economies. I feel that India stands in a good position to benefit from the transformations taking place in the vocation avenue. Most reports suggest that the jobs that will be in demand in future will include STEM specialists, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, health professionals, sales and marketing, teachers and trainers, big data, AI and blockchain specialists. India has traditionally been a major source of healthcare workers, sales and marketing professionals, teachers and trainers to the Gulf countries, and I am sure that we will be able to upskill our workforce to meet the enhanced need of the Gulf countries in these areas in the forthcoming years. Similarly, with our strong credentials in education and technology, I'm confident that we should be able to fill in the requirements in the areas of artificial intelligence, blockchain, and big data specialists. This will need to be done with public-private partnership. We will need to work together with the governments and with private sectors in the Gulf countries to remain updated with their requirements in the rapidly changing technological landscape. The COVID-19 pandemic has already altered the conventional workspace and has ushered in innovative work environment models. Businesses and organizations have adapted to work with fewer human resources and devised mechanisms to work from home. People's dependence on online delivery of household items and food has increased. Schools have become aware that online education will be here to stay. Doctors and patients have understood that many consultations can be done on phone or internet. Several of these changes are likely to stay, and this will mean greater dependence on technology and internet and lesser human resources and interactions. It's therefore important that we accept and adjust to the new realities quickly. There is no doubt that COVID-19 has posed grave challenges for the Indians working in the Gulf, as the Gulf economies got impacted adversely in several sectors, including in construction, aviation, tourism, and hospitality. Government of India, with the support of the host countries, ensured that our people were able to return to India in a safe and orderly manner, despite the large numbers and COVID-19 restrictions. I'm confident that in the post-COVID scenario, as the Gulf economies recover, Indians will be able to resume their livelihood in the Gulf. We are working together with our partners in this regard. And I'm happy to say that the air bubble arrangement with several countries in the Gulf have enabled a large number of Indians to return and resume their work. I would like to conclude by reiterating that our government is committed to the protection and promotion of the rights of our workers and their welfare. The updated draft Immigration Bill 2019, which comprehensively looks at addressing all aspects of migration, including skill upgradation, pre-departure orientation, strengthening of welfare measures for immigrants abroad, and coordination with the states, would be an important milestone in the attainment of our objective for ensuring welfare of our immigrants. Thank you all.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your keynote address. With your permission, sir, we will now open the panel discussion. And we would, first of all, request Ambassador Navdeep Suri, who was actually my ambassador in Abu Dhabi, to do the first statement or presentation in this session. Of course, Mr. Navdeep Suri was in the Indian Foreign Service. He was our ambassador in Abu Dhabi and in Australia. He had a 36-year-long career in the service, and currently he is Distinguished Fellow and Director of the Center for New Economic Diplomacy, CNAD. Navdeep Suri Saab also did great work on the skills harmonization framework that we keep talking about between India and UAE. And I think we will all benefit from his deep insights in this area. I would request him to make his remarks now.
Thank you very much, Vipul, Honorable Minister of State, my dear friend, Secretary Sanjay Bhattacharya, and colleagues. I was asked to speak on future of skills in the Gulf, and I was reminded of a visit that I undertook about 3 years back with the Minister of State for Artificial Intelligence, Omar Al-Olama, in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai actually, to their upcoming offices of the Dubai Future Foundation. They were housed in a building which was entirely 3D printed. Around the building, they had showcases of equipments that could, for example, mow the lawns or the sidewalks, that could do other routine jobs. And my question to the minister was, if you're going to be automating your construction industry and the services industry so rapidly and to such an extent, then what happens to expatriate workers in these areas? This is an issue, Honorable Minister, which also came up when Prime Minister visited Dubai in February 2018. He he addressed the World Government Summit in Dubai, and the same Minister of State for Artificial Intelligence took our Prime Minister around and explained some of these emerging concepts in which the Prime Minister was deeply interested. And the reason is, as you also mentioned in your remarks, the rapid change in the jobs scenario. There's a report by McKinsey which estimates that something like 40% of jobs in the Gulf today are susceptible to automation within the next 10 years. The use of technology is increasing. And so human workers will really have to stay flexible. They'll have to stay adaptable. And shift to continual upgrades of their skills if they are to preserve their jobs and remain relevant. We are seeing the shift take place again before our eyes from retail to e-commerce. I almost don't remember the last time I went to a mall because everything is shopped online these days. And you can see what that means for the many jobs in the retail industry as well. But I think there are 3 or 4 other trends emerging in the Gulf that one should pay attention to, apart from the technological revolution that is taking place. One is that the youth populations, the local youth populations in these countries are also growing rapidly, and the government is no longer in a position to provide employment to its people. And so in Saudi Arabia, in Oman, in UAE, in Kuwait, you've got these strong movements towards localization of jobs and to try and keep expatriates out of certain areas if possible. I mean, I wouldn't have thought it likely that we would see Saudis at the front desk of a hotel or in a retail sector, but I understand it's beginning to happen in small steps. And that is going to change the nature of the jobs that we seek. There is also a recognition that the abundance of low-cost labor from South Asia is actually withholding technological shifts, technological adaptation in some of the Gulf countries, and it is keeping productivity from growing rapidly. And so, the countries themselves, as they aspire to move up the technology chain, they will want to automate more. And it's something that we need to bear in mind. So my 3 points really are when we look at the job scenario in the Gulf. The first is, let's look at the new areas emerging for jobs. The ministers outlined some. I would say that the National Skills Development Corporation actually has done quite a substantive piece of work in identifying new areas of skills and in tying up some very useful partnerships with organizations ranging from Microsoft and IBM to the Amazon Web Services and others who can channel some of the skill development efforts in these areas. I remember a conversation that I had with the UAE Minister for Human Resources and Emiratization when we were talking about skill harmonization. And this issue had come up that they depend on India to provide more trained workers in different areas. And we had this fascinating collaboration to train drivers for the Dubai Expo. They would need 30,000 drivers, so train drivers for the Dubai Expo in India. and have them work in UAE during the expo. But I guess the point here that the NSDC makes is that can we get trained for new jobs? And my argument to the minister was, why do we only look at drivers? Why not blockchain coding people? Because if you are going to move all of your government to blockchain, then where are the coders going to come from for that? And so let's look at the entire spectrum of skills and not just the blue collar skills that we traditionally focus on. India is actually in a very interesting space right now because you've got champions like White Hat emerging, which is teaching coding to the kids. And they are becoming a talking point across many countries. So how do we leverage the fact that we've got very creative startups like that who are really at the cutting edge of new skills and rope them into the government's own efforts to develop its skills program further? We see the rise of the gig economy. And you will see people having temporary or part-time jobs. Are our people ready, and do we have protections in place so that they don't get exploited? Is there a way to create some kind of a platform for the gig economy, anticipating that this is where the new economy is moving? My second point is the need to upscale existing skills and to recognize that even areas that currently seem to be resistant to change will evolve fairly rapidly, and we will have to train our people accordingly. We look at the case of the construction industry, which has been by and large resistant because of the abundance of low-cost labor and the low benefits that are given to workers. But my personal view is we should get our people out of the bottom of the value chain and upskill them so that they can get better wages, even in the construction industry. But let's also look at other sectors. A constant problem for India in the Gulf is the situation of domestic workers, especially female domestic workers. And at the root of the problem, amongst other causes, is the fact that many of them come with no skills at all. They can't speak the language. They have never used a modern appliance. They have no exposure to contemporary hygiene. They come straight from villages into a metropolitan environment. And these are low-hanging fruits to impart those skills in housekeeping, etc., so that the same persons who are coming to the Gulf for jobs that are going to be around for a while at least get better paid jobs. Today, you talk in the market, and the Filipinas will get maybe 50% more than Indian domestic workers get, simply because they are better trained, they're better skilled. Look at the entire childcare sector. Look at the palliative care for elderly people. These sectors are not going anywhere. And I think, if we can look specifically at them, because sometimes they don't look too glamorous. Nobody wants to talk about training domestic workers or training childcare workers. But believe me, these will help a lot of people escape the poverty trap. Same for nursing, same for healthcare, same for teachers who can teach the new skills whose demand is coming up so rapidly. And if there's one lesson that COVID-19 pandemic has taught us, it's the speed at which the educational technology sector is growing. And the fact that today we have already seen the potency of online training programs. We see schools switching to them, we see colleges switching to them. And I would love to see our skills development organizations proactively look at some of the edutech innovations that are coming up and see whether they can be applied to our workers in a way that we almost build continual education, annual upgrades in skills into the programs for migrant workers. And the third and final point that I will make is about what was mentioned earlier about the harmonization of skills. And this may be useful to some of my other colleagues who are present. The idea behind this was really very simple, that the UAE has identified something like 78 vocational sectors where vocational qualifications have been specified. Now, how do we, working through the NSDC, align our training programs in a way that we our skill training programs are harmonized with their requirements, and we retain our position as the largest and most preferred source of expatriates in the Gulf. So we not only aligned our qualifications, we aligned the training and certification norms according to the qualification needed. We got recognition for our skills awarding certification bodies, and the Emiratis played along with us to tweak their own regulations. That how do you incentivize an employer, say in the construction industry, to hire a skilled worker, a certified worker, as opposed to a cheaper unskilled worker? And they actually brought down their work permit fees for certified or skilled workers, so that there's an incentive to the employer to engage them. I think the first batch of 133 workers for the construction and automotive sectors was selected about a year and a half back. Then the COVID came, of course. But I think that's something that once the economies recover, it's something that we can build on with UAE and with the Saudis who have already taken a look at this, and take it beyond that. Finally, we've had a lot of migrants come back from the Gulf, and in states like Kerala, there's been a discussion that can you use this gap while they are back in India to reskill them or upskill them for other jobs, or maybe to be more qualified in the same jobs. And therein perhaps lies an opportunity as well. I'll stop at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable insights. They've always been wonderful. I think 3 points are just to reiterate. One, you said look at all spectrum of skills, including coding, for example, or part-time jobs, gig economy. The second point is need to upskill even in traditional sectors in which Indian workers have gone to the Gulf. The third one is on the harmonization of skills and certification, on which Government of India is also working through NSDC and through MEA. And the fourth point is, of course, reskilling. We would, after Ambassador Navdeep Suri, go for the presentation by Mr. M.S. Unnikrishnan. But just to let you know that Honorable Minister of State will also have to leave us in a little while. But perhaps we can have, sir, the presentation from Mr.
7-8 minutes.
Yeah.
10 is okay.
Yeah. So let me give the floor to Mr. M.S. Unnikrishnan. He is the chairman of CII National Committee on Industrial Relations. He's also chaired the Capital Goods Skill Council Committee under NSDC, and also the Skills Working Group of BRICS Business Councils in 2016. He's been the managing director and CEO of India's foremost energy and environmental solutions companies, Thermex Limited. I would give the floor to him to make his remarks.
Thanks a lot, Vipul, and Honorable Minister, Honorable Ambassadors, very senior executives representing the Indian diaspora from the Middle East, Consul Generals, and all the audience. Thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity to talk. I will talk on behalf of a person who worked for a 5-year period in Dubai at some point of time. So having a ground level experience, and having run an energy environment company as a CEO for a 13 long year period, where almost 11 to 12% of my income came from Middle East, especially GCC countries. And even today, some of them are plants are run by us Indians only over there. And also, currently, I'm working as IIT Bombay's Nash Academy head. I moved away from industry into academia. combination of all this put together, my ground level understanding of the Gulf plus what's happening in India related to education. I would look at what Minister mentioned about as the most important thing for understanding the change that is happening in the Middle East, and we targeting and rearranging, reskilling India. Our mind is to be reskilled to look at Gulf differently. For almost 3 to 4 decades, we were the builders, fundamentally the ground level, bottom of the pyramid workmen to build the India GCC. We contributed and we acknowledge it also. That's the reason by which we have an extremely good political relationship with GCC at this point of time. But what are the changes happening in that part of the world? And being very smaller population, their ability to be adapting to the changing world will be far superior than our countries. This is the first understanding that we need to be having. In and around India, in the Asian and their citizenry, one of the sectors which will be moving into 5G spectrum first will be the Middle East, in my opinion, other than China. No other country will be able to adopt to that. What is that 5G going to be bringing in the next 4 to 5 years period of time? Life is going to be automated. Businesses are going to be automated. Manufacturing processes are going to be automated. Now, for this, do they have the skills available there? See, one way to have a forward-looking thinking and preparing our workforce to meet up with the requirement, then India will be the winner in that one. So this is something which we need to be understanding. Some of you, Ambassador Navdeep Puri has also articulated it very well. Wellness is going to be changing in that part of the world because you may not need doctors. And in any case, doctors are being sent back from Kuwait or maybe from UAE. So instead of doctors going tomorrow to ensure that the newer varieties of skill needed in wellness management of a population in the entire Middle East, are we getting ready? We already are having, just to keep you informed about it, India is sending palliative care people to the entire Europe now. We are one of the most preferred countries to be providing people of the kind. So in any case, culturally, we are very much attuned to the GCC countries. So that's an area of evolution. Similarly, in city management, we have smart cities in India, but in my understanding, Indian cities will be smart by name, smart in some areas. But in the Middle East, you will really be finding the entire systems are going to be smart. If there is any country in the, at least in the nearby, one can talk about autonomous transportation, driverless transportation going to be happening, driving going to happen, it is going to be the Middle East. Now to maintain this kind of system, you need a highly skilled manpower. Who else in the world can supply rather than India? I'll give you the numbers. In year 2019, before the COVID happening, your country had admitted almost equal to 1.5 million students into the engineering stream. Remember, in the entire engineering colleges of your country, today there are near to 8 million. That means 80 lakh students undergoing engineering in degree, post-graduation and PhD. That's a population of many countries. Where will you get that kind of a reserve available? Now, are they ready to be and skilled to take on this kind of opportunity? No. This is an area where we need to be very careful. Now, I would request ambassadors to be also really ambassadors for this part, that our reservoir has got to be trained. A G2G agreement, government to government agreement, that retaining the demographic balance which they are wanting, can we have more highly skilled people going from here where the salaries are maybe 5 times more than a construction worker? We don't need to be looking at the quantity, we need to look at the quality, so that ultimately what we're looking forward is to have a trade balance with those countries. If we're importing so much billions of dollars worth of petroleum products, can we have income coming from our expats over there? It's possible. Similarly, as Minister alluded in the beginning, work from home is going to be remaining if there is a post-COVID. In my opinion, there is no post-COVID. Beyond we passing through the COVID, because there was never a post-malaria era. Similarly, COVID also will continue. We'll learn to live with that. But there will be a time when work from home, where almost, in my opinion, 30 to 40% of most of the work is going to be from home. So which reduces the burden of this visa regime, travel regime. So can we offshore the highly skilled work, which is done by every organization in the entire Middle East, back to India? So can we have centers created with the government participating in government-to-government agreement, offshoring centers for UAE, offshoring center for Saudi Arabia, offshoring center for Kuwait, let it be spread across the country. The way we created our IT hubs in Bangalore, Hyderabad, Gurgaon, can we have offshoring centers? So highly qualified Indians do not have to go and live there. They can sit at home. In India, work for them with the hub and spoke mechanism to be created. But this would be needing, not an individual cannot do that. There are already companies doing that in India, like TeamLease is doing it. Quest Corporation is doing it. But please remember, in less than a decade, these two companies have created a white-collar workforce of almost equal to 1 million. So if we are able to incorporate this kind of companies also into this, we will be able to create this kind of a setup for them. And instead of worrying about whether 30% of all the expats are Indians, and if they were to be getting a salary so low, I'm sorry to say that we just passed our wage scot bill in the Parliament of India. It is under preparation. The minimum wages in India is going to increase substantially. At that level, at 18,000 rupees average salary for the starting level of a workman, I don't know whether how much will be the arbitrage available between Indian workmen working in India versus he going abroad to the UAEs of the world. Whereas the cost arbitrage of the labor, if you have to convert into a skill arbitrage, which I'm sure my successor who's going to be talking just now from the NSDC will be talking about, India has got 40 sector skill councils created by us. I think we were to subsume it into some 28 or 30. It's one of the largest in the world. And we have mapped across the world as to where are we currently. And level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is almost laid down by us. Now, as we are going to be, India is also advancing. India of 1980, which started migrating labor into that part of the world, is not India of 2020. That is not going to be the India of 2030. We will have a segment of workmen over here, blue collar I'm talking about. They are as good as anybody in the world. So those can be the skill arbitrage along with the cost arbitrage is what we need to be training for. And we need to divert our attention. Yeah, I agree with you that we need to take care of the domestic workers, their protection. This is a necessity. We need to take care of it. But beyond that, working into the future, making a plan for the next 10 to 20 years time, I'm sure the entire Middle East is going to be digitized. Their personal lives are going to be digitized. They are the people who are going to be running, in my opinion, with the 5G. They are the people who will be doing everything through remote. They're going to absorb automation to such a level, which India will, maybe salivate at some point of time. But they won't have the capability to create it, maintain it, and running it. Advanced economies need a lot more of maintenance than what you need for the capex. That is the capital expenses. So India depended upon the capex earlier. India has got to depend upon the operational expenses they're going to be incurring. And this is something which we need to have a dialogue level done and prepare India for it. And I'm sure as a representative of CII, just to let you know that we were the first people to set up a skill development center in Afghanistan of all the countries. We're done now spreading it across. We've got a global presence available. So at CII, we will be able to do that. We are now having pre-departure training centers created for migrating labor from India. Just to give an example of it, for 150 interns to be sent to Japan, we were asked by the government of India, can you prepare themselves for it? Right from teaching the Japanese language to the culture and the behavioral pattern needed. Please remember, earlier your workmen were almost like slaves for the Middle Eastern honors. But tomorrow, when your white collar is going to be migrating, they are intellectually at a superior level. They may even compete with the local white collar. So in that, the behavioral correction is a necessity. So we need to have pre-departure training centers created apart from the skill upgradation done for it. We are ready for it from CI. We already are running one in Chennai. We can run it wherever you think is needed for it. Apart from that, for the newer skills needed over there, for example, to talk about in hospitality, a lot more of market got opened up. We recognize that an Indian hospitality may not be sufficient over there. So we signed up with the eCall Hotline. It's of Switzerland at CII level, created an institute in support with the Swiss Hospitality Organization. So it's practical for Indian organizations to tie up with international organizations of repute and have a certification done for Indian white collar. And the Indian white collar, in my opinion, will be one of the most preferred in that part of the world. So shifting from a blue collar focus into a white collar or no collar focus, let me say that way, is what India needs to be doing. And if you're able to manage it properly well, whatever you are dreaming together that we will never have a trade imbalance with the Middle East is practical. Because you got manpower, thank God. And I gave you the numbers to start with that. 8 million, those who are currently ensconced into the engineering colleges of India are your reservoir available. They may not need even maybe a 5% of that. And every year we'll be adding on 1.5 million going on. And I can vouch for it, sitting in IIT Bombay, running an institute over here to say that your people are they're arguably one of the finest available and possibly the cheapest available. I'm quite surprised about that. Even in the current season of recruitment, we never had any organization from GCC coming to recruit our graduates. We had people from Singapore, we had from Hong Kong, we had from America, from various parts of the world. But this is an area, I'm not trying to say anything negative. We have neglected it. So together we need to go forward and inform them. There are institutes of this kind in India, which will certainly help you to, take better people, better high quality people. So I rest my points over here. And possibly, from CII, we'll send it back to you also, whatever are our focus areas that we have suggested from our side. Thanks a lot, Vipul, once again for giving me this opportunity to address the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Unikrishnan, and all the points are very well taken, especially as to how to use our human resources for the skill and cost arbitrage, as you said, in the Gulf region, and also to move towards the no-collar or white-collar jobs from the more blue-collar jobs that we have normally depended on with the Gulf countries. I think NSDC keeps working on several of these areas, and Ms. Avneet Kaur, who is the head of international collaborations and corporate strategy of NSDC, she is with us for this panel discussion today, and I would now invite her to make her remarks.
Very good afternoon to everybody, and many thanks to the Ministry of External Affairs for organizing this panel and inviting NSDC. Very happy to be participating in these discussions along with the other esteemed participants. And some very pertinent points have already been made by Ambassador Suri and now Mr. Unikrishnan very passionately. I would like to just take the discussions a bit forward and highlight few initiatives that NSDC has undertaken over the last few years to build capacity and also to enhance the quality of the skills ecosystem in order to fulfill the need for skilled and, more importantly, certified workforce in the Gulf. So to begin with, earlier this year, NSDC had released the Global Skill Gap Study report that was conducted in collaboration with Ernst & Young. This study provides an in-depth analysis of international workforce mobility opportunities across 15 countries for Indian workforce, including 3 countries in the Gulf region, UAE, KSA, and Qatar. Now, the study shows that in the coming 5 years, there's a demand of up to 3 million workers in sectors such as construction, trade, real estate, and others. These are, again, more of the traditional sectors. And significantly, the demand for healthcare workers is also going to increase, particularly in the current context. So NSDC has been actively engaging with various countries, including UAE and KSA, through G2G and B2B collaborations for promoting mobility of skilled and certified workforce. One of the primary initiatives which the minister spoke about and Mr. Suri as well alluded to was the skill harmonization framework. Typically, such a framework entails working with international governments, regulating authorities, international awarding bodies to benchmark and harmonize skill standards, thereby leading to mutual recognition of skill levels. Now, in the case of UAE, NSDC is working with the Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratization and the Abu Dhabi Quality and Conformity Council for mutual recognition of skills. Under this program, benchmarking of 16 UAE skill qualifications with 13 Indian skill qualifications, all in the construction and automotive sectors, has been successfully conducted. ADQCC issued the first ever mutual skill recognition certificate for candidates that were certified by the Indian Sector Skill Council. Now, in addition, the government of UAE has announced incentives like visa rebates to employers for hiring these workers who have been certified from India. And the larger goal of the program is to recognize an expanding set of occupations in various sectors, including new age technologies. So I think what's really coming out of this discussion is that we have to move away from the traditional areas. And even within the traditional areas, we have to look at higher level jobs, which is something that we plan to go as we move forward. But to begin with, the focus has been in these sectors. So likewise, in the case of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, NSDC has signed an MOU with Takamul Holding, which is a semi-government agency under Ministry of Labour and Social Development, for a skill verification program. Now, as part of this program, a network of assessment centers known as skill verification centers are being empaneled across India for conducting assessments on these benchmarked qualifications for potential migrant workers. And in the first phase, 16 occupations have been benchmarked between the two countries. These are in sectors like construction, plumbing, electronics, and automotive. We plan to go live with this initiative in the new year, in the first quarter itself. In addition, NSDC is also collaborating with various employers in the Gulf region for an upskilling, or what is also known as a recognition of prior learning of workers program. Now, under this program, we aim to enhance the skill sets of the existing workforce to promote retention and vertical mobility of Indians in the job market. So, for instance, we have conducted pilots with employers in Abu Dhabi, such as Extramix, Sawad, Trojan, China Construction, for around 100 employees, primarily in the construction and infrastructure equipment sectors. And going forward, we plan to scale it across sectors and regions and employers. Very importantly, to operationalize all these initiatives, NSDC has created a market-driven model called the India International Skill Center Network. Now, through this network, various mobility initiatives, like the ones we have spoken about, such as upskilling, assessment and certification, language training, and also pre-departure orientation training, are being operationalized. As on date, we have 95 centers that operate over 500 IISCs across more than 300 trades. Now, these India International Skill Centers are equipped to deliver employer-led and outcome-oriented skill programs to prepare our workforce to meet global demands. So we look forward to continue our work with the MEA to further the GOI's vision to make India the skill capital of the world. And I would be very keen to hear more from our co-panelists and collaborate with them to take these initiatives forward. So I'll stop there. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Avneet, for this overview of what all is happening between India and various countries through NSDC. And I think you mentioned that you've been working with 3 countries, namely UAE, KSA, and Qatar. And we do have panelists from the other 3 Gulf countries as well. I think one can see as to whether there could also be some things which could be done. Gulf countries, substantial Indian as a percentage. And I think if NSDC can also work on those countries. The other thing I think that came out through your presentation, and I think other presentations as well, is that perhaps in the shorter term, what we are looking at is traditional sectors like construction or the retail sector, etc. And the focus should be on the skill harmonization and certification processes. And maybe in the slightly longer term, we are looking at coding and the new technologies like AI, etc. So I think that's one thought that perhaps someone can think about as to how do we work on both these things. We had, in terms of our panelists, Mr. Bhagwan Asarpota at the first number. I think he is facing some issues with his connectivity. So I would request Mr. Pinak Maitra, who is the CFO of Kuwait Projects Company, Kuwait, to make his presentation first, if he is ready with it. So I think we are also not able to hear him. Perhaps there's some technical issue on his side as well. If we can move to the next one, which is Dr. Kiran Gopal Kumar Rajalakshmi, Dean of Middle East College in Oman. If he can make his presentation, He has 25 years of experience at national and international levels in areas relating to school management, higher education management, teaching, research, quality assurance, etc. He is a PhD from London School of Economics and Political Science, LSE London. Let me give the floor to him if he is able to make his presentation at this time.
Good afternoon. I hope my presentation is now visible.
Yes, it's visible. You can go ahead.
Good afternoon, Sri Sanjay Bhattacharya, Secretary, MEA, Sri Full Joint Secretary, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors, distinguished speakers and panelists. Good afternoon, and hope all of you are and your loved ones are safe and in good health. My presentation is primarily from a very academic skill perspective. There are issues that MEA would have to take care in terms of strategies to how the different relationships are managed. But I'm trying to put forward some of the skill sets from what needs to be addressed as we move forward and looking at what is the situation here. Now, we all know about some of these facts that the GCC is one of the fastest growing populations in the world, doubled in 20 years by 2015 and expected to grow by another 50% in the next 25 years. It's an important trading partner of ours and a strategic partner for us. As the Honorable Minister pointed out, we have around 8.5 million Indians in the GCC, which is around 15.17% of the total residents, 30% of the total expatriates in the GCC, brings about 50% of the foreign exchange remittance to India. And combined with UK and US, that will be around 85% of the foreign exchange remittance to India. So it's a very important area for us. Very recently with the Vande Bharat, far exceeding 1 million people returned to India. But it's important to also realize that we are talking about, as the Honorable Minister pointed out, around 80%, he pointed out as 70%, some studies show 80 to 87% of the Indian expats are in the unskilled and semi-skilled sector. So it's important to know that that's the skill profile at this point in time. The other background that we all need to be aware of, which has again been pointed out, is that the economic structures are changing. It's no longer an oil economy that we're talking about now. Things are moving on. COVID has fostered the changes in this area. Every government has come up with their own vision strategies and there are 2-3 important sub-strategies. One, of course, is about diversification. The other is about nationalization and looking at how education can happen in this area. So these are the 3 common ones that you find across, whether it is Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi, or the UAE, different strategies. You'll find that they're all trying to diversify, bring in nationalization, and also make sure that education is happening in this area itself. And when we're looking at the demographic trends, again pointed out very in the initial comments by Ambassador Suri, that this is an area where 40% of the population are under the age of 25. We also have a demographic dividend and an advantage, but this region also has an advantage. And the nationalization scheme would continue. Oman is expecting to have around 40% by 2040 in the private sector. Kuwait has gone ahead and done something more stricter they're trying to get 85% of nationals in the private sector by 2021. So the workforce balance between the expatriates and the nationals will continue, but the ratios are going to change. There are going to be more nationals being given opportunities to take up jobs in the private sector, and the education policies are in place. And Saudi, for example, spends almost a quarter of their GDP on education recently. The other, of course, is about automation. We talked about it. And I just wanted to point out that as much as there is a potential risk to jobs, there is the advantage of the GDP going up because of the AI and other new technologies that we talk about. But technology fears has always been there. I've taken the headlines from the New York Times of 1928. It says that prevalence of unemployment with greatly increased industrial output points to the influence of labor-saving devices as an underlying cause. This has always been the case. And we have enough studies which show that in 50 years, for the last many centuries, 50 years, 50% of the jobs get redundant. They no longer exist. So it keeps happening. It's just that probably it's going to be more faster in the next few years. So these are data which has already been present in terms of by mid-2030s. We know that many jobs will be lost. So increasingly, there is a difficulty in understanding what is the implication on automation with respect to the specific jobs, because we wouldn't know what are the kind of jobs which are available. There again, some of those data available, the AI contribution to GDP, again, the details of which have been presented by speakers before, including Honorable Minister. So this is the implication of AI to GDP by 2030. So essentially, given this circumstance of a productivity possibility, you would find that more and more technologies are adopted in this region, unlike before. I wouldn't say that it was not, but labor-saving technologies were not being used to the extent that it was possible. So if you again look at the technical automation potential in the GCC, very comparable with the rest of the world, you would find that a score of 43 means there's a huge potential that technology can now replace many of the activities which are being undertaken in the region. So country-wise averages and looking at the overall average, this of course takes into consideration Egypt as well, but it's very close to the global average and comparable to some of the other benchmark countries, including that of India. So in that sense, it's comparable. It is not that they are substantially advanced when it comes to technology. You would find that the 5Gs would come, you would find that other technologies are coming in, but labor-saving technologies, because of the fact that labor was available cheaper, was not considered. And of course, the implication on that is different across the spectrum. For if you're taking highly skilled workers, then the scope of automation is much less. Whereas if you're looking at some of those occupations where the automation is easily possible, then you would find that they can be replaced. So about 60% of the occupations have at least 30% of their activities that are automatable. Again, if you're looking at from a degree, from a qualification perspective, it's again obvious that you would find that the more skilled, the better the qualification, there are chances that you would be able to work, but otherwise you'll be replaced. And it's important to look at the high school or some experience part where it is the highest, because that's where the bulk of our semi-skilled employees are working. Just the last 1 or 2 slides. This is from the World Economic Forum report of January 2020, which is a mapping of the emerging skill clusters versus the relative importance of the skills. And as was pointed out earlier, I mean, these are the emerging ones across the world, and that's going to be the case in the GCC as well, whether it's in terms of content production, marketing, sales, people and culture, product development, engineering, cloud computing, data and AI, the green economy, and the care economy, which is very important. And the care economy is where perhaps we are going to have a huge advantage moving forward, perhaps a bigger advantage than what it is now. At some point in time, we can discuss that, and looking at how that can be a potential area where we can cater to this part of the world, not just in terms of nurses, but also palliative care, but also skilled people who can take care of the population. So just come to my last slide. And as we all know, if you are looking at the national strategies of all these countries, looking at the demography, looking at the nationalization, looking at automation and the skills which are coming up, it all poses multiple challenges for a country like India. But one of those challenges is that how do you prepare your youth for jobs that do not exist today, for technologies that have not been invented so far, and for solving problems that have not yet been anticipated. And yet, as some of my earlier speakers pointed out, there are huge potential and huge opportunities available. And if you're looking at online, which is now becoming a big possibility, online education, online skill development, but also in terms of outsourcing to India. But I'm not just looking at outsourcing as outsourcing, but I'm really thinking about the possibility in 4 or 5 years where it will be the extension of work from home to become a work from India perspective. And that's not just as clusters happening in India, but in 5 years' time, it will be individuals who can work across the globe. Our fintech specialists will be working with banks in Singapore in the morning, with Oman or UAE banks in the afternoon, and perhaps with a bank in London by evening. And also probably having a pani puri or a vada pav from the local joint in between, and then join the family and the local society by evening. So there are opportunities which are available, and India could really take that up. And that's important because we need to reflect on the national education policy. And the national education policy makes it clear that the skilled labor force will be available through the new mechanisms of multidisciplinary receptive skills, problem-solving skills, etc., that's being built into the highly skilled, the graduates of tomorrow. And so India can emerge as a global leader and global knowledge hub, providing this highly skilled workers who work across the world, from east to west, north to south. So that's one perspective. The National Skill Qualification Framework is an excellent initiative which has been undertaken by the government, which ensures upward mobility and is now linked to the national education policy. And the expectation is that by 2025, around 50% of the learners would be having vocational skills at different levels. And also the policy talks about how at the 6th standard, 8th standard, 10th standard, 12th standard, it will not be just about passing examination, but specific skills that every student would have by the time they complete those classes. And coming to the the unskilled labor force, of course, we need to upskill them. And we can't continue like this, but there are possibilities in terms of the care sector, hospitality, logistics, etc. And so in this case, like the international skills certification and what National Skills Development Mission is doing, probably we need to look at national skills certification, and they need to be oriented. The pre-departure orientation training which is happening would need to be continued. And I think this is a responsibility for everybody. It's not just government's responsibility when it comes to upskilling. I would suggest that not only that governments work with private sector, but also the youth of the country who needs to take up this responsibility. I mean, again, coming from an education institution perspective, I think it's the responsibility of students. I mean, if it is possible, we could even make it mandatory for students to go and upskill people in the villages. Like an engineering college student, he can actually go and train some of our fellow citizens in different parts of the world. And so the 8 million students that Mr. Unnikrishnan was pointing out are not just students. They're possible ways of reaching out to the entire country in terms of upskilling our labor force. Could be engineering, could be care, and many other ways of how we can take care. So the skill development cannot be left to the government, the private sector, but it has to be a large movement where from 5% of skill, we become close to what South Korea is, which is around 96%. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I look forward to the rest of the panel sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kiran. We would now move to Mr. Asar Pota. I think he is able to join us. He is the MD of P. Haridas Sons Group of companies in Bahrain. And he has, of course, long experience in manufacturing, retail, education, these three sectors, as well as in social work. So he's also dealt with the Indian workers in Bahrain. I would give the floor to him if he can speak now.
Sure. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are. Thanks.
Okay, great. Very good afternoon, Gulf. Good evening, India. I'm really honored to be part of this panel discussion. Now, to begin with, I must say that the first four speakers and later the panel members from the Gulf, I think they spoke so much.
Sorry, Mr. Asopota, it's difficult to hear you. Your voice is breaking. So what I would suggest is if you can switch off your camera, then maybe we should be able to hear you at least. That can perhaps work if we can work on that basis. I'm sorry.
Sure, particular. It's fine.
Yeah.
Switch off the camera. Switch off the camera.
Turn off the video and switch on the.
No. So we're not able to hear you. So as not to waste time, if you can work on it, and we'll come back to you. In the meantime, let me ask if Mr. Avinash Gaikwad, the General Secretary of Indian Community Benevolent Forum in Qatar, if he is able to make his presentation. Mr. Asopota, we'll come back to you after Mr. Gaikwad, if possible. And then let's see, maybe at that time it might work. Mr. Gaikwad, if you are available, please, if you can make your presentation.
Yes, sir. Namaste. This is Avinash Gaikwad. I'm a General Secretary of ICB of Qatar. So first of all, thank you for Ministry of External Affairs for allowing me to present today. And also I thank our ambassador, Dr. Deepak Mittal, Ambassador of India from Qatar, to nominate me for this presentation and PBD. It's my honor. I also acknowledge the presence of Joint Secretary and also the Secretary of Ministry. And previously the Minister was there, so thank you for his participation. And all the distinguished panelists today and online viewers and listeners for this session. Before moving, I will just explain about ICBF, which I represent, and why we are relevant to labor issues or their skill set. I'm very glad, the ICBF, Indian Community Benevolent Forum, is working in Qatar under aegis of Embassy of India, Qatar. Since 1984, it is a Pravasi Bharatiya Sammani awardee. And we are working very closely with Qatar Ministry of Labor and Qatar Ministry of Interior and Embassy of India, Qatar, for the welfare of all the laborers and all people who are in need in the benevolence part. And I'm a General Secretary for that. So moving on to my presentation, as we all know, the GCC population is growing every year around 2 to 3% per year if you put it totally. In Qatar, it is growing a little faster. Currently, it is 2.79 million, as you can see in this table. Overall, in Gulf states, if you see the Indians represent a bigger part, and that is for Qatar, I can see it's around 692 in 2018, but now it is in 2009 it's around 7.5, 750,000 plus. So it is growing. However, if you see the number of Indian migrated since 2015 to 2019, it's keep on reducing. The trend is a reducing trend. You can see in this table. So the declining number of Indians departing from work in Gulf stems from a variety of factors at both ends of the migration corridor. The shrinking number of migrants heading to the Gulf is also partly attributable to the tightening of the procedures for sending workers abroad by the Indian government. However, remittance grew by over 14% in 2018, despite the overall slowdown in the Indian migration to the region. There is also a change in the relative contribution by sending states of low-skilled workers to the Gulf labor market. Gauging the demand for migrant workers takes into account following wide range of factors, several of which are extremely difficult to forecast: economic and demographic trends, technological developments, the effective implementation of nationalization of policy, changing societal views related to the work, related government policies and incentives, etc. The economic downturn and political scenarios has an adverse effect on all industries and causing the private and public sectors to shrink, thus reducing the overall requirement of the human capital. To date, despite the active promotion of policies to nationalize the labor force in several GCC countries, there remains an embedded preference among nationals for public sector over private sector employment. A portion of the labor market in GCC countries will be permanently segmented and structural. That is the manual and relatively lower paid jobs where there will be a continued demand and that nationals are not inclined to carry out. This includes domestic works, agricultural jobs, and manual labor on construction sites. Moreover, current GCC business models still mainly rely on low-skilled and labor-intensive processes because labor remains cheaper than adopting new technology. Countries like India will be keen to invest if these will result in improved employment opportunities, wages, and working conditions for their nationals abroad. It appears that it will ultimately be down to employers to calculate whether it is cheaper to hire migrants and pay levies for doing so or to modernize and recruit for retained nationals. The ILO estimates that at least 2.1 million additional migrants, domestic workers, will be required in GCC over the next few decades due to the changing demographic profile and family structure. The demand for care workers ranging from domestic workers to healthcare professionals, example nurses, midwives, etc., is intricately linked with the healthcare conditions and demographic transition in the GCC. In addition to childcare needs, the GCC countries will increasingly depend on migrants for elderly care. In the UAE, the proportion of the population over 60 was 40,000 and is projected to increase 207,000 by 2025. In Saudi Arabia, at least 10 million people are expected to be 65 or older by 2050. Regardless of the skills levels required, care works will continue to be carried out by the migrants. In the past decade, GCC countries have invested heavily in the infrastructure and tourism to diversify their economies. Current mega projects scheduled to be implemented over the next 10 to 20 years is in the Middle East, total US dollar 100 billion. In construction sector, the demand for migrant construction workers will likely remain high due to employers' continued reliance on labor-intensive rather than capital-intensive and technological practices. Nationalization policies may see the local population replace foreign workers in certain managerial positions, such as directors, project managers, health and safety officers. Based on the GCC countries' vision documents and the prevailing economic and labor market trends, the migration governance frameworks in the GCC region in the short term are expected to evolve in the following areas: imposition of skill certification requirements on migrants by countries of destination, deepening of linkages between skill training and testing centers and overseas placements agencies in countries of origin. Competition among countries of origin will be based on their ability to prepare workers in line with the employer's needs rather than just their ability to pay high recruitment fees. As GCC countries move toward a skill-based knowledge economy, the countries of origin will continue to face a competition. However, rather than based on ability to pay high recruitment fees and related costs, it will be based on their capacity to train workers according to the needs of employers in the countries of destination. The Indian government can invest in training centers in GCC countries where the need of skilled workers are gathered, circulated then to the various regions of the India to source appropriate candidates and train them accordingly to the need. The training fees can be gradually covered from the worker's income, thus providing him a chance to get a right job at the right place. The introduction of skill certification requirements in the medium term will mean a significant restructuring of the regional labor market. Technological and automation investments in the labor market will affect the number of and the nature of migrant workers in the field of construction, services, and manufacturing, etc. Local language adoption by workers, including English language and Arabic language, would be useful in competing for the job. In India, the workers are protected by Provident Fund scheme, etc. I believe such scheme may prove beneficial to workers in GCC countries if made available. There are few slides where I will go fast. Projected occupational categories on low-skilled or semi-skilled workers in medium-term demand up to 2025 are in construction and maintenance of buildings, sales and services, domestic work, and education and health. There are emerging job functions in Gulf countries are listed as below. There are emerging professions are available in Gulf countries, including entrepreneurship, program analyst, quality assurance, health and medical, business leadership, etc. Thank you. This is my end of the presentation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gaikwad, for your very comprehensive coverage of the issue and for all the work that ICBF does, for which it has also been awarded with the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman. Let us now move ahead. I think Mr. Pinak Maitra, the CFO of Kuwait Projects Company, KIPCO, in Kuwait, he is now ready with his presentation. He's a senior executive with more than 3 decades of experience in managing change and growth and has experience in a variety of industries and sectors. Since we are running quite late in this session, I would request him to make his presentation, and let's move ahead quickly on with our presentations. Thank you. Mr. Maitra, we are unable to hear you. I think there is some issue with connectivity with Mr. Maitra. So if Mr. Matthew Joseph in Saudi Arabia, if he is ready with his presentation and remarks. I think we'll move to him. He is the business head of Wipro in Saudi Arabia, and I would request him to make his presentation remarks now.
I hope you can hear me, and you can see my
Yes, we
screen
can.
also. And can you see my PPT,
Yes, we can.
please?
Yes, yes.
So a very good afternoon, honorable guests. My name is Rakesh Joseph. I head the data analytics and AI practice for Wipro. So Wipro has been in Middle East for more than 15 years now, and we are the leader in the technology space in the region, especially in the Indian set of companies. We have around 4,000 people working with multiple clients across the GCC, with a greater focus around UAE, Oman, Kuwait, Saudi, and Qatar. Now, in the presentation, what I would be covering is what is happening today in the technology world, how are enterprises changing, and how are we really tuned to make sure that our skills are in the same direction, right? So we will look at some storylines on what is happening in the GCC market, how Wipro is helping them, what are the skills, and what are the customers, or what are the organizations looking at from organization like us, right? And that would certainly help us in moving to the next agenda on how we would have to make sure that our people are ready with the future skills. I will quickly start the presentation with a brand value adoption slide, which quickly gives you a view of what has been happening in the last 20 years, right? So if you really look at the brand values of organization in 1990s versus what is happening in 2020, you would see there is a definite trend wherein the 1990s were dominated by organization which were more asset intensive. You would see that in 2020, you have a shift towards organization which have created a space for themselves, a space which has never existed, a space or a set of organization which could disrupt the way of working. And if you look at a common theme among all of them, around 80% of the branded organization in the 2020 survey, you would see that all of them are using data as a strategic asset, right? And this is one of the key impediments which is happening even in Middle East while we are looking at how organizations are transforming. We are seeing organizations trying to make sure that the customer base are safeguarded. How can they make newer set of customers? We are seeing organization looking at their competition and trying to gauge how can they actually leverage from competition. They're looking at the internal set of data and trying to see how I can really optimize or use this data as a strategic asset. They're also looking at how we could innovate and bring in value to my stakeholders, right? These are a few of the key areas which you would see in all these organizations. Now, quickly getting into what we are seeing in Middle East, right? So Wipro, as I said, has been in the region for 15 years, and we have been fortunate enough to work with most of the organizations who are going across these transformation. And we do see the transformation which initially started in the banking and in telcos have also now come across the non-banking telco sectors, right? So we are seeing huge digital transformation happening in the transportation sector, where we are trying to look at how this data could be used to increase the revenue, how this data could be used to improve the way traffic can be managed, how the data could be used to make sure the sentiments of the people can be looked at, right? We're working with multiple airports in the country on trying to use, again, the same data and trying to look at how to improve the customer value which is coming in. How do you make sure that they're able to they forecast the demand, how they're able to give a better view to the people whom they're servicing, and all with the purpose of bringing data analytics in the place. We're also working with multiple utility organizations, trying to make sure that the entire smart grid network are better serviced and can work much more effectively by making sure the assets are managed well. We see even in the construction area, the digital enablement is happening, where they're looking at how they could use the humongous amount of data which they have across the years, which has been unstructured, on how these data could be used for better cost benchmarking, how they could make sure that they get customers better, how they could to bring in operational efficiency and all, right? So the message which I was trying to say that while I was hearing there is a lot of impetus on how to move the blue workers to the white collars. Today, the GCC is already in this gap, right? And I think we are already a little bit late, and we would need to speed up our journey to make sure that we are the chosen partners of choice in these digital transformation. Now coming into what are the main things which the GCC organization or organization which are trying to move into a digital organization, a new way of working, looking at, right? So one capability which most of the organizations are looking is to reinvent their customer base, right? So trying to look at how can I really look at my customer journeys, the customer touch points. How do I make sure that my customer base is increased? How can I identify more profitable customers, right? So that is one key focus in almost all these customers, let it be the government sector or the non-government sector. The other area which there's a lot of focus is about how do I make sure that my competition is being managed, right? Because with a lot of technology innovation happening, competitions needn't be always direct, right? So how do I make sure my competition is seen and managed? How do I make sure that the data which I've been collecting, right? And historically, you would see, especially in the non-technology organization like construction and all, there are a huge amount of data which has been prepared but never used in the future aspects, right? So there's a lot of focus on how can I use this big quantum of data to my advantage so that I can create insights and meaningful decision making in my future. There's a lot of focus on innovation and time to market and time to value, right? Now, all these is can be clubbed into one segment, what we call as process reimagination, right? Now, with all the digital transformation, there's a lot of focus in GCC on how the processes can be reimagined to make sure that they could step up the value chain and also drive the digital transformation in its true spirit. Now, when I really look at more from a technology element, right? So when the process reimagination happens, it's certainly more of a domain-centric, more of a value process chaining. We are also seeing impetus on the technology, a mirror of it on the technology piece. We are seeing a lot of programs running around RPA, which is the robotic process automation, on how can I really automate many of the manual tasks which I'm looking at, right? That is certainly a big focus which is there across the organization. We're also seeing a lot of practical implementation of augmented intelligence, artificial intelligence into the program. Let it be around machine learning, let it be around text mining, let it be around NLP and all. There are a lot of these programs which are running to make sure that the AI is being infused in the process, and that is helping you to reinvent yourself in the way you're working. The data from the organization are being searched and used to churn meaningful insights on understanding how you work and how your organization work. And the analytics is certainly being used to give you a different view of the same organization, right? The other element which is very much catching up is the customer experience. How can you make sure that the experience feeler to the end customer can be improved, or even for the employees can be improved? So this is again an extension of your process reimagination, trying to understand the customer journey and trying to look at how can I really make seamless interaction, seamless customer experience, right? Now, many of these are being powered with cloud being a reality in Middle East, right? So if you were to look at 1 year, 2 year back, cloud was a distant dream. Today, we see a lot of cloud adoption happening, especially in UAE, Qatar, Oman, and certainly the Saudi Arabia is also picking up, right? Wherein cheap adoption of technology, cheap or faster adoption of technology, if I could use the word, faster adoption of innovation, faster adoption of time to market is coming up, right? And the bigger intent of all this is to really create an intelligent enterprise, which is intelligent by virtue of the data, which is able to give an immersive experience to the customer, which brings in a lot of simplification in the way you work. Now, if you really look at the government sector and people who have been in the region, you would know that in the last 5 years, you would have seen a lot of simplification in the process which is happening, which certainly is also a byproduct of automation, right? And coming back to bringing the future skill, the middle block is what we would like to really focus on, which is predominantly how can we really skill our new generation into getting adapted into RPAs, AI, data science, analytics, customer experience, and certainly cloud chain, which has elements of blockchain, SaaS, your PaaS and all. Now, the advantage which the Indian community has got, it's certainly the building blocks of all these transformations technology. And as one of the esteemed speaker was talking earlier, we have certainly an advantage of technology on most of the other companies, right, of the country. So this certainly is to an advantage. The second element of the transformation is data science. And if you really look at the Indian curriculum, we certainly have a good foundation on statistics and mathematics, right, which becomes an elementary to many of these new generation technology way which is happening, right? So from a skill level, it's quite, the foundation is good for us. It is really for us to get into aligning with the right stakeholders in the region and also make sure that we become partners of choice in this next wave, if you could call as the digital evolution 2.0 and how we could do it. I've got one more slide which speaks about what is that organizations are looking at, right? So Wipro had done a study with around 300 customers in the region, trying to really look at that while you are trying to be more intelligent, what is that you're really trying to do? And for being intelligent, where all could be the investments, right? Now, this slide would really give a view of where are the investments going to happen? What is that when organizations try to say that they want to be more intelligent is going to? So one, certainly is security, the technology angle of it. The second element, if you look at the left-hand side, you would see that customer experience is of utmost importance, which is coming in. Organizational agility, right? And improvement, the employee experience, followed by the reduced cost, right? So these are the few areas which organizations are looking from a digital enablement part. And towards the right-hand side, you would see that what are the actions they're going to say. There are going to be a lot of investment of technology, refresh of technology in the next coming of years. There's going to be a lot of trainings to make sure both the expat and the nationals are being trained over these. Because many of these new age technologies are not known to the local community, we would have a lot of white collared expat partners coming in. And last but not the least, there would be a lot of hiring of digitally enabled skill, and which certainly could be a big advantage to the Indian community because, as one gentleman was saying, we have 1 million plus hired engineers, and if we could really train them into the future skill, it's an impetus of new opportunities which is lying here. And certainly, again, as one of the esteemed panelists was saying, it's a good opportunity for us to build in more quality than quantity, right? Because certainly the pay packages for these skills are much, much higher than many of the organizations. With this, I would just like to conclude. My email details are there. If certainly we could continue the panel discussions later, or in case you would want to reach any of us, we are more than happy to help you out. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Matthew Joseph, for your presentation, which has brought us to how we are going into the more digital space. I think you ended with the notion of quantity versus quality. I think given the large numbers of Indian workers who are there in the Gulf, and as I said earlier, there seems to be in the next 3-4 years, there should be a good demand in the Gulf for the more traditional workers as well. I think we have to work on both these aspects. I think that could be a good topic of discussion in the panel discussion if we get more time. I would now move ahead and request Mr. Rahul Sikka, who is the VP and head of the Africa part in L&T Constructions in UAE. If he is ready with his presentation or remarks, then we can ask him to make his presentation.
Excellency, this is Rahul here. I think Mr. Pinak is already sharing his presentation, so maybe he can go ahead if that's okay.
Okay, then we'll move ahead with Mr. Pinak Maitra if he is able to share his presentation now.
Apologies to all who are on this transmission. It has been a little messy. So let me begin without further ado. And indeed, we are talking about the future. And future obviously triggers in our minds a picture of progress, or shall we say, climbing up the ladder. As we participate, can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please
Great.
go ahead. Thanks.
Thank you. As we participate in the PBD convention, we all have the opportunity to celebrate the oneness of us Indians, both in India and around the world. Talking of celebration, it should make us all proud that India is one of the 6 countries in the world which will produce a COVID-19 vaccine in record time. We need to thank Prime Minister Honorable Shri Narendra Modi ji for leading this charge, and the scientists at the Indian Institute of Virology, doctors, nurses, the manufacturers and distributors for making this happen. Indeed, as a result, Achhe Din 2.0 is near. The vaccine story is a good example of innovative disruption. Like all disruptions, this will bring pain and gains. Gains coming from the birth and growth of new industries. Slide 2 basically shows, Slide 2 shows examples of industries that will thrive in the 4th generation industrial revolution. The underlying drivers of this disruption are technology, connectivity, deep learning, and AI, aided by rapid decline in cost curves and increase in compute speed. For example, hardware and software improvements reduce the cost to train neural networks by 100 times since 2017. As a result, AI capabilities are multiplying as models are trained with more than 10 times more computing each year. This cost reduction provides opportunity for Indians as a result of its large population base and skilled workforce to apply and innovate with these tools and platforms. So what am I saying? Countries and people who adapt, learn, and change will win big. For example, disruptions in USA from automation may result in the US GDP to hit 40 trillion by 2035, nearly 40% higher than the current estimate. Similarly, India's ambitious GDP aspiration of 5 trillion can be moved up further by 40%. Like all real-life stories, every story has both sides of the coin. And for countries that do not choose to change or adapt, they are basically condemning themselves to slow demise. So what are the future skills and how do we get them? Slide 3 is my ballerina slide. We need to dance and jump at the same time. The destination jobs of tomorrow require us to be comfortable with continued skill transition. Put simply, whatever our current skill is, this future skill needs to fill the future skill needs to fill a role will require us to add soft and or technical skills. Slide 4 is interesting and encouraging. It suggests that once we have acquired a core skill, the time taken to upskill and master new age skill is reasonable. It's little over a month for some skills, while it's about 3 months for skills that have a higher technical content. For me, slide 5 is a punch in a cocktail slide. In short, we need to build EQ over our IQ muscles. It highlights the need for soft skill, as well as the ability to apply the soft skill in a measured manner with our IQ or core trade skill. We also need to develop the skill to work with cross-functional teams. Today, Indians in Gulf are respected for their invisible skill to do the hard work, solve the tough technical problems, keep the business running. This is very good. What could be better is upgrading on the soft skills so that more Indians in the Gulf move into decision-making position. This will increase their ability to impact and influence strategic initiatives and support greater collaboration with companies who are innovating in India. Slide 6 highlights the skills of the future and what it tells us that they are global in nature. Each time all the Indians in the Gulf and in India have a chance to work with new technology at a workplace in the Gulf or India, we should be the first one to volunteer and be involved with such teams or projects. The more blended the skill sets are of individuals, the greater is the market value and portability across multiple industries. India is making big leaps in many of the disruptive industries. Indians in Gulf should leverage the skill development back home and reskill and upskill to progress their careers. In the KIPCO group, we are doing this actively by using the ITS service capabilities of India to execute our digital strategy. Moving on to slide 7, it provides possible approaches to successfully build future skills. Many of the speakers and panelists have spent a fair amount of time talking about it. And so I will move into an example of what we say is walking the talk. So we as a group of so-called NRIs or Indians living outside started an NBFC called Agrim, which was licensed by RBI in May 2020. Our purpose is to provide affordable housing financing to the unbanked Indians in a dignified way. We did this by targeting initial approval in 10 minutes and disbursement of the loan inside a week. We hope that 2021 will be a year where we'll be able to deliver solutions that will ensure that domestic and blue-collar workers in the Gulf know that their families live nicely and they have a nice house back home. By collaborating with forward-looking building companies, governments, and NGOs in India and the Gulf, we hope to build upskilling training capabilities within the communities for domestic and blue-collar workforce in the Gulf. I hear many solutions that the government has educated us today, and we are very thankful for those things. Moving on to the last slide, this is what I call a reflection slide for all of us. It asks the question, what is important to us as Indians? I leave it to each of you to decide. For me, when India progress and Indians progress to become Atmanirbhar within themselves as individuals, building on our spiritual roots will increase our ability to become better at giving, caring, and sharing. I want to thank the ambassador and all those who facilitated and gave me the privilege to make this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pinak Maitra, and especially on ending on the note of Indian ethos of giving, sharing, and caring, and your points about upgrading the soft and technical skills for our workers, as also the need for continuous reskilling and upskilling are duly noted. We would now move forward and give the floor to Mr. Rahul Sikka from L&T in UAE to make his presentation.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished panelists. So I too face a bit of a technical challenge. And after having gone in and out of this meeting several times today, I am not strong enough to try to either switch on my video or share the presentation. However, whatever I have to say is something that doesn't really need a presentation. So to start out, of course, many good points have been brought forth by the Honorable Minister, by Ambassador Suri, who I admire a lot, like a lot of us do, and of course, other panelists, Ms. Soni Krishnan, Ms. Kaur, Dr. Kiran, Avinash, Matthew, and Pinak. So one of the key things that I would like to actually place is a look at the perspective that we see today. While there is a lot of good work that happens in India, a lot that we're looking in the medium and the long term, we definitely need to look at the short or even the immediate term. So we have close to 9 million Indians in the GCC, right? I came here in 1993 and I've stayed here for the last 27 years. And I've seen this entire region go through what it has gone through, which is truly remarkable. A growth, a change, an evolution that a lot of us hadn't even imagined when, in the early 90s. The problem that I see, or the problem that we think is worth attending to, is the reality on the ground, where 30% of these 9 million migrants, Indian migrants, are white-collar employees, whereas 70% of them are blue-collar or even unskilled employees. We need to address their requirements. So all the good things that Avneet spoke about from the NSDC, rather than implementing them only in India, we have to consider implementing them in the Gulf. So the people that are here cannot be sent back to India whitewashed and brought back again, or trained, certified, and brought back again. So we have to consider what are the possibilities of upskilling them here while they're present here in the GCC itself. What are those steps that we can take for our white-collar people to be enhanced, to be improved from who they are today? We do not, for example, have a continuing professional, let's say, certification program. There is no enhancement program that is brought in. Yes, people on their own can take some initiatives, join courses offered by IIM, Ahmedabad, or the other institutes. But not just that. Maybe what we need to do as a government, what we need to do as a people, is to identify through the Indian associations, through the IBPs, IB, the Indian Business Professional Forums, etc., is reach out to all the professionals, give them the opportunities to enhance their skills, always try to improve their standing or their understanding also of the current situation. How can they be more useful, more impactful in the current scenario? This is what I would suggest, that we think in terms of enhancing the skills of these 9 million people here while they're still here, right? And of course, we put in place all of those mechanisms that we're thinking of to ensure that there is a benchmarking, there is a certification, and the new workers that come in, the new employees that come in, are people who are trained and who are certified. So that is one of the things that I really and truly wanted to bring across. The second thing is, again, it has been raised by several speakers already, so it would be sort of a repetition, but the digitization of work, right? The mechanization of work, these are two aspects that really and truly require an enhancement of skills. And this has to be done while we are still here, because we live and work over here. We do not have the luxury of being able to go back to India, get certified and come back, get educated and come back. So specific programs through various institutes targeted at enhancing the skill sets of Indians in the Gulf, the 9 million people that are already here, in my mind, would be truly helpful. Other than that, of course, there are several things that have already been pointed out. I would not like to repeat them, but yes, there are new types of jobs that are coming up. We're looking at solopreneurs. We're looking at people who are going to be working from home, an office that actually operates out of your own home. We're looking at various technologies that are super, super critical for us to know today as white-collar workers. All of this is important. Healthcare workers, ensuring that our healthcare workers are able to stay at the forefront and stay safe, not to be sacrificed, not to be, let's say, made the frontline workers without being provided the adequate skills and the adequate protection, because we cannot afford to do that. Each of us Indians are extremely precious. We have families back home, etc. So we have to ensure that the entire process is well written, well thought out, and well implemented, of course. So I will end with that rather than taking up too much time. Once again, my request is, let's please focus on these 9 million people that are already there in the GCC. Let's try and make them better. Let's try and enhance them. Thank you very much to the Ministry of External Affairs for giving me an opportunity to talk about the subject. And I wish everybody safety and good health. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rahul Sikka, for this the new idea or a fresh idea that you have put forward in this panel discussion. Of course, having worked in Dubai, these are things we have talked about as to how, perhaps in a public-private mode or more by the professional associations and through private sector. How can we upskill the workers in GCC itself, and also provide the continuous upgradation of professional skills in GCC itself? I think the chartered accountants, for example, do something wherein there is a continuous, every year they do a little bit of professional enhancement through their own association. But I think this is one point that we definitely should consider, and I think NSDC should also consider this point as to what can be done in this regard. I'm sure that as we go forward, these things will definitely come. I would now move to Mr. Tariq Chauhan, who is the Group CEO of EFS Facilities Services in UAE. He manages a very large number of Indians and others in UAE. He is a seasoned professional entrepreneur and a Harvard alumni with over 30 years experience in leading profitable business ventures. And he has an impressive portfolio of acquisitions to his credit. I have known him from Dubai, and he is very dynamic, and I really look forward to his presentation as well. So, Mr. Tariq Chauhan.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I have a similar challenge what Rahul has, and I also thought it's an opportunity for me to give you a more comprehensive view of what the current dynamics of the labor force in this region is. The TV. Sorry, I've got some. I'm using an alternative audio source. Reduce the TV volume, please. Take out the TV. Sorry. So there are three aspects which I'm sure we had extraordinarily great presentations, definitely great insights from the minister and from Ambassador Suri and the rest of the other panel speakers. However, I wanted to emphasize on the unskilled, skilled, and the transformation side of the business that is changing the skill sets, and how not just the skill sets, how the businesses are changing. I would like to emphasize with regards to the unskilled, when we talk about the unskilled workforce, we definitely have many challenges. We've talked about their onboarding, we've talked about their the compliance challenges in context to the local region where they've not been paid in time, they've not put the settlements in place, and there are many aspects of it. Now with the recent, what I just heard from a gentleman from CBF, from the CII, mentioning that Indian minimum wages are likely to move up to 18,000. You can be rest assured this is going to be a serious impact on ability of Indian workforce to come and work here. Now, what do we do in that case? We possibly have to move into three immediate measures. One is we got to work on their upskilling. I won't use the word only upskilling because upskilling is more relevant to executive and technical workforce. We are of the opinion we need to do reskilling in this case. We also have to make sure that the automation, which is a critical aspect that has been one of my major challenges. I employ close to about 2,000 people in the region, over 23 countries, and of them, about 10,000 are Indians. And 2/3 of them are the technical workforce. My challenge remains about it when I bring them on board, their ability to integrate with the current workplace due to automation challenges. Because what has been taught in colleges in India or the way the IITs and the various others have evolved, that has not been compatible to what is critically needed on the work. How do we make people successful on the workplace and we having the right skill sets? So we need definitely some sort of upskilling on that part of it. We also have to look at the transformation that is happening in the workplace. Now, if I look at it between the UAE and Saudi Arabia, with the nationalization at the core, including Oman as well as Kuwait, we definitely have to look at what are those skills that are critically needing and the traditional skill sets, how they are disappearing with new skills coming in. Because some of these works, as Ambassador Suri talked about, the retail is taken over by the large number of Saudis in Saudi Arabia. So where does Indians have to look at what sort of skill set they need to look for future? I definitely feel that we need to really work back home in India with establishing some sort of facilities such as employment bureaus, where we could help and upskill people into skills that are likely to take on, that are likely to be the future skill sets for the Middle East. Oil and gas, technology, our customer services centers, and all these are likely to move outside the UAE or the GCC to possibly to many other new centers. We've seen it how over the last 10 years, so many business such as account processing, account receivables, these are all now outsourced back home in India. So that is one area definitely which will help to look at some sort of a transformation. But more importantly, when it comes to upskilling, we got to really work back on the semi-skilled people first, because they form almost 60% of our workforce here. Between the unskilled and the semi-skilled people, they are the largest number of. And I don't think back home in the country we have sufficient employment opportunities to take them back. So we got to, as Rahul has rightly pointed out, we got to rework back immediately on their upskilling here. We also have to look at the next level, which is between the accountant, the engineers, people and others. How do we basically transform them to the new skills that are likely to be the ultimate future? For example, Middle East, where UAE has led a significant transformation on the AI. And if I look at the kind of AI jobs that are in waiting at this moment, will definitely be a big boost for Indian workforce. We have made significant inroads in robotics and others. And this is one workforce which can make up definitive inroads into the Middle Eastern markets. There's another aspect which I'm seeing it, and I think it is important, is the language. Arabic language is becoming critical. I am currently hiring almost 1,500 people in the next 3 months. And I can assure you 2/3 of that workforce, that includes the lowest of housekeeping workers, bilingual requirement is critical. And if I have the bilingual requirement, I'm in a position to meet many other challenges, such as the minimum wages and others. So I think we got to also be mindful, if we are looking at Middle East, Arabic language and a basic capability in context to speaking, if not understanding and writing, that's also very important. These are some of the points I would like to conclude here. I can talk days in, day out on this issue of upskilling. I'm currently sitting on the global workforce transformation panel with Innovate Education in this aspect. But if we have to talk about in context to India, we must not ignore the unskilled, semi-skilled, and then look at the skilled workforce, because I don't have a challenge. Indians by far are the most preferred when it comes to hiring people between personal, professional, and functional skills. Indians definitely score the highest. However, if we have to be future ready and we need to meet the current ongoing challenges such as nationalization and others, Indians has to rework back on upskilling in those aspects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tariq Chauhan. Of course, you keep working on these issues, so your insights are always very valuable. I would now once again try to go to Mr. Bhagwan Asarpota in Bahrain, if we are able to get him to make his remarks. Mr. Asarpota, please.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, please.
Okay, I think I'll go ahead. And if you want me to switch off the video, I will do that in between. May I carry on?
Please carry on. Please carry on.
Okay, thank you. Very good afternoon, Gulf, and good evening, India. Apologies for these technical glitches. Now, all the earlier speakers, particularly the Minister and Mr. Suri, I think they've given the excellent ideas. Plus, of course, all for the following speakers after that, whether from Gulf or even from India, they have really drawn the good roadmap of the subject so well and so practically that I think I would like to, of course, because of this technical glitches, I've tried to shorten my presentation because I'm sure that we will be running short of time. Of course, as an Indian, I'm proud that India is looking for in this field of skills development. Going back to the main point of today's discussion, now my observations are as follows: to keep the space with upskilling and retain India's position as both the largest and the most preferred source of expatriate workers, what we need to consider following: to create a framework that would incentivize employers to hire workers with certified skills in lieu of uncertified workers who could be hired on a different wage scale. Now, this has been discussed by one of the panel members, which I appreciate. The other one is to enable Indian workers to move up to the value chain by getting wage premium for their skills. We need to address to that. Now, example is, of course, this was again repeated in today's panel discussion. Saudi Arabia Ministry of Labor is in process of launching the Skills Verification Program, SVP, under which the blue-collar workers may have to undergo a skill verification on specified skill standards at a designated assessment centers in their own country of origin, in this case, India. The government India must also take a holistic approach to maximize gains from sectors where short training programs can create tangible opportunities for overseas employment. Close coordination between Ministry of Skills Development, the Ministry of External Affairs, and the relevant authorities in Delhi, and engagement with the relevant state governments and skill development organizations will ensure that the training programs and curricula are standardized. I think this is again was discussed, quite a number of points have been discussed, so I'm not elaborating there. I'm skipping so many other points. But the sufficient flexibility is to be tailored for specific geographies, like the 6 countries in the Gulf. So maybe even we could have the standard policies for all over the Gulf, one policy, but maybe certain policies could be sort of tweaked. For example, Bahrain and Oman, these are 2 countries where majority, or maybe I would say put it this way, 50% of the population is the locals, the nationals, unlike other 4 Gulf countries where the expatriates are the large numbers. For example, Bahrain, which I belong to for last 50 plus years, we have a family business here. So I could vouch that it is, like we have 55% expatriates and 45% Bahrainis. So the Bahrainis are very large number. Same goes with Oman. So I think some tweaking of the policies will be required. So I think I would conclude my presentation, and thanks for giving me an opportunity. And sorry for those glitches. Good day.
Thank you. We were able to listen to you. I would now kind of throw the floor open if Alice wants to on the other presentations that they have listened to, or if any of our ambassadors or consul generals want to make a remark. In the meantime, let me just take one or two comments that we have received on our social media. One is Mr. Zakir, labor surplus. Please explore more on labor intensive opportunities. I think we have dealt with both. Mr. Tariq Chauhan also spoke about this. We can go to both skilled and unskilled side by side. If Gulf countries are automating smart, their low spectrum jobs. So I think we have to make this balance, especially in the nearer term. We have Mr. Rajpal Tyagi from, I think, Kuwait, who has said that can we have dedicated digital platforms for Indian human resources in specific countries or regions? These platforms could have training materials for specific skill enhancement, calendar of training programs, etc. I think this is something that maybe some panelists can handle. NSDC may also think about it and say a few words on this particular thing. If we can have dedicated digital platforms, and of course, I think private sector people in individual Gulf countries can also look at this suggestion. There is Ms. Rosaline Himlatha Thiagraj in Qatar, who is saying that in Qatar, Qatar is increasingly focusing on financial and sports technology. What are the opportunities for India in this regard? I wonder if our participant from Qatar would like to, Mr. Avinash Gaikwad would like to say something about this. She also says that we are hearing about Qatarization policy. How will it affect the opportunities for Indians? I think this is something that has been already covered by several people. It's not only about Qatarization, it's about localization of jobs in almost all the Gulf countries that we have to think about also. We have Mr. Joshua Koshi, who has said that will the government put in regulations to adequately protect overseas workers in this changing world of work? I think this I can say that the speech of our Honorable Minister of State itself covered these aspects, whether it be in terms of considering the future of work in the Gulf or taking care of our workers currently through platforms like eMigrate or Madad, or talking to the Gulf countries, for example, on skills harmonization framework. All this is to protect our overseas workers. So these are some of the comments. If any of the panelists wants to take the floor, I think we can have about 5 to 10 minutes, and then I would request our secretary to make some concluding remarks.
Sir,
if anyone wants to take it, please.
If you permit me, I have some points to answer to Madam who said I am Avinash from Qatar.
Okay, Mr. Gak. Yes, please.
I'll quickly say about two things with respect to skill sets. There are certain aspects of universities or education centers. Their certificates needs to be validated by Qatar Ministry, MMUP, and there are some hour of skilled laborers or engineers facing problem, and they are losing jobs in turn, like people coming from Institute of Engineers. So there, if we can, government between, we can work out some aspects for certification approvals and going into the system. So most of our skilled workers can get a job opportunity in sports and FIFA and so forth aspects. And there are many opportunities India's people are working. I can proudly say 80% of the Indian managed or Indian businesses are working in Qatar. So this is a large number, and we have a large opportunity to collaborate and bring more Indians. If we can get a bilingual English and Arabic knowledge set for them in sports and other educational aspects, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gaikwad. I think you would know, being in Qatar, and our embassies in all the Gulf countries keep working on the issue of equalization of degrees. These issues keep coming from time to time, whether it be Qatar, whether it be Kuwait, whether it be UAE. But I think we need to remain engaged with the local governments, which we all do. In our embassies and in our consulates, and we try and remove these impediments which might come on equalization. So rest assured that our embassy will be taking care of it. They will remain engaged with the Qatar side, any issue in this regard if it arises. And the larger point I think that has been made in this panel is more on the certification side and skills harmonization side between India and Qatar. And that I think is the future for Indian workers in the Gulf. If someone else wants to make a point, please tell us. Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Tareq
Asad.
Chauhan. Yeah, I would like to comment
Okay,
one thing. Based on what was earlier mentioned, somebody mentioned about reskilling. With the blended education and the blended L&D scope evolving, and especially post COVID-19, I think what we can do, either the government of India or in partnership with some of the local bodies, if we can build some sort of online platforms for learning. For example, we are doing at the moment AI-based English literacy program for our workers. And I have got close to about 900 workers at the moment going through that particular program. Apart from that, we can also do blended learning initiatives through online platforms. And I think that is something which is critically needed, knowing that not every company has sufficient resources, and neither the governments have that sort of resources. So we got to be innovative here. We got to be transformative. And I think an online platforms with the help of Indian Skill Development Council and various others, good opportunities can evolve in that area.
Well, thank you, Mr. Tariq Chauhan. I think that point should be noted, I think, by both the CII representative as well as NSDC, and see as to how we can encourage the private sector essentially, but also look at the relevant government agencies if we can get into such kind of blended education platforms. Of course, in the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been a lot of focus on school education through online platforms. And I'm sure there will be entrepreneurs in India who would be willing. They might still be working on such kind of platforms. I think it's only someone in the government or in the industry bodies who has to take a look at it. I have Mr. Asar Pota who wants to say something. So, Mr. Asar Pota, please. You are muted, Mr. Sapota.
Thank you. I wanted to mention about the house help subject which we have discussed, the training of house help. Now, in line with what Filipinos have been coming and they're getting higher salaries and all that. Not only that, to protect our house help workers coming to not only India, in this part of the world, but anywhere else, my humble suggestion, though it is sounding little harsh, that it should be made mandatory. I think that was the only suggestion from my side. I hope you could.
Okay. Yes, we could hear you. Thank you. Thanks. We've listened to the point. Thanks.
Just a query, sir. Avinash again. This NSDC is working all across GCC parts, or it is currently concentrating on UAE?
I'm not sure if Avneet is there or not to answer that question.
My question is, can
if
we
you're there,
more
please,
have?
if you could answer.
Yes. Sure. So we are working in Saudi Arabia, in UAE, in Qatar as well, and we plan to extend this to other regions. So we will be more than happy to hear from anyone in this gathering on any ways by which we can do that through B2B or G2G partnerships.
Thank you. We'll be in touch with you, madam.
Surely. Thank you.
Well,
This is-
thanks, Avneet. I think our ambassadors are also listening, and so I'm sure they will take a cue. Thanks.
This is Pinak. I have one comment to make. Is that okay?
Yes, please. Please go ahead. Yes.
Okay. So I just want to share an incident that I recently observed. So I was talking of the vaccine, and the Indian vaccine is probably one of the most effective dosed vaccines, 6.5 milligrams. It's got the right DNA. It travels very easily. And it's very interesting that when I put that subject to people here in Kuwait, they went to Pfizer, which is, yes, new technology, mRNA, but it's a 100 mg vaccine with risks embedded in it. Obviously, people are doing a lot of work, but what it pointed to me was that despite the progress that we are making in technology, the messaging of that quality is not going through. And I think that we all need to put our heads together to find out how we message that India offers not only great value, but it offers great quality. I think that will help us progress up the value curve because each of us will push the other people up. So I think that was one comment I wanted to make. For Kuwait, the whole there's a massive development across the causeway. For all those who have come to Kuwait, they will know that we have connected a whole island that is just vacant now. So for Avneet and the rest of the team, I think that there is a great opportunity for us either as a B2B or G2G to start focusing on how we can help the state of Kuwait to execute on that vision that they have. And this is a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar project. And so that is the other thing that I just wanted you all to be aware of and take appropriate action. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pinak.
I can have my say, please. Hello, I'm here. May I have my say? Hello, I'm here. May I have?
If any other panelist wants to take the floor, otherwise I will request Secretary CPV and OIA, Shri Sanjay Bhattacharya, to deliver concluding remarks for this panel.
May I have my say, please?
I think we can go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Vipul. Thank you, panelists. I think that has been a very engrossing discussion on a subject that's of great importance, particularly as we look ahead. As you know, we've had two sessions today on the Gulf. The first one was really, again, future-oriented, looking at how we look at partnerships beyond the energy and human resource connect that we have between India and the Gulf region. And the second one was specifically on skills, which is largely connected to the human resource element. But I think in many ways, it connects with this overall connection of the partnership. One of the themes that came out in the first session, and I think we should keep that at the back of our mind, was that there is a great degree of goodwill in the Gulf region for India. And I think some of you also mentioned how the Indian is the preferred worker.
And the idea then is that we should continue to be in that very privileged position. Now, as the Minister of State had pointed out, that we are looking at a period of transformation, and we have to adapt to this new situation. I think there are many steps that are being undertaken, and many of you brought out very vivid examples of how this is happening. Ambassador Suri described it as automation versus workers, localization because of the population growth and the rising number of youth. Also, he said very interestingly that are low-cost South Asian workers holding back the growth and development or introduction of new technology into these areas. I think somebody else mentioned that this is a case, this was Dr. Kiran from Oman who mentioned that this is a case in which the Gulf policies are moving towards diversification, nationalization, education. And I think in that context, the manner in which the Indian worker will be present will be having to adapt itself. So if we look at the reality of what we are facing, today we have something like 8.5 million people over there in the Gulf. Maybe about 70% of them are workers, which puts it at roughly about 5.5, 6 million people, workers and professionals, and the rest are affiliated people. And then what we have is amongst them, we have a large core that is unskilled, semi-skilled, and then we have a small cadre of highly qualified professionals, managerial staff. And I think what we have to look at is the overall balance, because if we look at the situation back in India, we do have a very large number of people across the country who are looking for opportunities to work in different parts of the world. And the Gulf obviously is one of the traditional destinations that they wish to go to, particularly from certain parts of the country. But we've also noticed that these migration patterns are also evolving. So for instance, while we do have a very large pool of people in the Gulf, there are new patterns of migration which are taking people to parts of Europe, to parts of East Asia, and these are actually growing at very rapid pace as well. And so what we will find is that we will have to adapt our policies and work with the different stakeholders. And I think it is extremely important, somebody talked about this as well, of how we need to coordinate between the different elements. So how we coordinate between the skill center, the policies that are done by the government, and most importantly by industry, because industry has to be in touch with what the future demands are. So I think we will have to have a two-track policy. One is that the very large cadre of people who are in the unskilled, semi-skilled kind of professions, that we have to do what NSDC has been trying to do. And they've been doing it extremely well in terms of the harmonization of skills, in terms of the upskilling, reskilling, in terms of the certification, in terms of the mutual recognition, so that that same worker who is now certified for a particular kind of a job will actually command a premium. And why does he command a premium? Because the access conditions into the market now become such that the cost of entry is reduced, because the foreign employer, the FE, knows exactly what kind of a worker he's going to get because he's got this certification. So we are, as you know, working with the UAE and Saudi currently. The Minister of State mentioned about it, and in trying to integrate our immigration platforms so that there's greater transparency and that the certification brings greater rewards in terms of the remuneration. One thing that we've realized is that while it might seem that, you know, some people coming back, they could use this opportunity for reskilling, this does not really quite happen in that way. And so I was very interested in the idea that came up from Mr. Sikka in the Emirates, in which he talked about training in the Gulf. And this was an idea that Mr. Chauhan again continued. And I think this is an idea that we should also explore in a more intimate manner and see as to what are the elements of this that can make this a viable proposition. Because while on the one hand, training in India might seem to be more reasonable and economical, it also has to be more appropriate for the market. And so will it be better if we do it in the Gulf? So this is, I think, an extremely interesting idea. And I will ask NSDC to look at this much more actively, because we are now looking very actively at looking at this harmonization process, extending to the entire GCC and to Malaysia, which is, of course, another part of the world, because that's where a lot of such workers go to. And if we can have this kind of integration of our platforms through which it will happen, then if it is more efficient to have the training facilities overseas with the existing workers. And I think we have to, as I think it was mentioned by Navdeep extremely eloquently, the common workers like the domestic workers, childcare, nursing, teaching, these are things that we do need to have much better certification about. So while we have to maintain the focus and protection and care for that element of workers who are going from India in very large numbers, I think what I'm hearing from Mr. Unikrishnan, who also represents CII, and many of the others, particularly from the Wipro representative, Matthew, from Saudi Arabia, and then is that the Gulf is really undergoing a massive transformation, notwithstanding the massive difficulties we've had in terms of technical issues for this particular webinar when we couldn't get connectivity with the Gulf. But the Gulf seems to be going through this massive digital revolution. And if 5G is coming to the Gulf, if they are moving towards increased automation, if they are moving towards truly smart cities, if they're moving towards driverless transport, is this a time that, as my Wipro colleague from Saudi mentioned, that Indians who are at the cutting edge of STEM capabilities, is this the time for them to kind of scale up their operations and to look for the opportunities which are higher up in the ladder? And I liked that example that was given by Mr. Mitter from Kuwait, in which he talked about these various elements in which we need to scale up and move up the value chain. So I think this is a new opportunity. And I was recently taking part in the global summit on skill development, which was held by the CII last week, I think. And in that, there was, or just a couple of days ago, in which there was this very interesting example which was brought out. Our own Director General of Training is now looking at 13 new skills, which are new age skills. And these are skills such as data analysis, smart agriculture, mechatronics, cloud computing, process automation, artificial intelligence, human-machine interaction, blockchain, and others. And they are now introducing these new age skills into the skill centers with the objective not only of addressing what will be local demand within my own country for such skills, but also to provide the material for increasing our footprint in the international market. So I think we have to kind of balance this in a way in terms of looking at the large mass of people who travel from India as migrants to the Gulf, who may be not so skilled, but I think they would do much better if there was reskilling, upskilling, certification, harmonization, matching of migration platforms. And on the other hand, a very big push by our IT majors so that they can get into this market as it evolves. And I think one of the things that was mentioned is that the new investments are going to be in terms of technology inputs, in terms of training, and in terms of hiring people with digital skills. And so if these are the ones that we are anticipating that the Gulf will see much more in terms of, then how do we position ourselves over there? We in the Ministry of External Affairs have been very deeply involved and closely associated with the Ministry of Skill Development and with the NSDC in particular, the PDOT program, the pre-departure orientation training that we do mostly for migrant workers before they leave. And I think we are looking at ways in which we can refine it and make it even more responsive. And one of the elements, and I think this came out of the discussions today, is that perhaps we should have a greater input of language over there, because that improves that person's interaction ability in the state that he's going to. And of course, how we combine it with the tangible skills, because the soft skills are one part, but I think the job-specific skills, which are more cognitive, those need to be scaled up as well. This has been an absolutely fascinating panel, and I think the tone was set by the minister's remarks, in which he outlined the broad perspective in which we view this particular subject for an area that is most critical to us in the Gulf. And I think your valuable inputs will give us many ideas to take forward as we engage with all the stakeholders in the country. We in the Ministry of External Affairs, I wanted to share with you, also have our own think tank on migration issues called the India Center for Migration, which has been working collaboratively with many centers, think tanks, international organizations such as the ILO, IOM, and as well as with different governments and their think